The New York Times is attacking you. What's new? New York Times, I saw this trending on Twitter. Jesse Lee Peterson covered it, but I have more details, right? Of course, right? More details. Christianity will have power, which is a quote from Trump. And that's like a headline from this New York Times article. A pledge bonding Trump to evangelicals, and they mean white evangelicals. And they come out and say it too. And it's as if the whites are into whiteness. No, the whites are just into what's right. Because these white evangelical Christians are not, they're not even into the whiteness. Not even as much as they should be, to be honest. They should be recognizing the attack on, I mean, I think they do see the attack on whites. It's the attack on actual justice. The white evangelical Christian support may seem mystifying to the outside observer who is blind, right? Because you have to be blind to not see, I don't mean Nazi, to not be able to see the white Christians and whites support Trump. It's an article by this woman, Elizabeth J. Diaz, D-I-A-S. I forgot to get a picture of her. Would you Google a picture of her? D-I-A-S, Elizabeth Diaz. And I don't know if she's Hispanic or what her name is, but this is from her article in New York Times. This is mostly quotes from the article. At the same speech in which he said that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and get away with it and not lose any support, he was speaking President Trump. Had you heard that line? I could shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and my supporters would still be with me. Because we would know that it would be a justified shooting. Because Trump attacks those who attack him, right? And he's right in his attacks. They tried to call him a bully. You know, they were trying to call these white Christians supporting, that's her. I don't know. Never trust. You know, she does not, based on what I'm reading in her article, she does not have, I don't know, an understanding of Christianity or Christians or reality. She's repeating just lies against Trump, and I'll get into that. But they tried to call Trump a bully, a bully for them, for the white Christians. And no, he's not. He is for the white Christians, because in the same way that he's for everybody, because he is for everybody. He's for what's right, though. Talk about a boomer. I love boomers. But he is not a bully. That's so stupid. Anyways, he spoke at Dort University, D-O-R-D-T, Dort University at Sioux Center, Iowa. Iowa, beautiful place. That's where Representative Steve King is from. And when Steve King was at his high school, it was mostly white, and now it's mostly Hispanic. And so, I don't know, he got primaried. No, did he get Yeah, he did get primaried with the support of that sleazy woman who's supposedly the chair of the GOP, I want to say DNC, RNC, the Republican National Committee. Mitt Romney's, basically, it is the same thing as the DNC. Sleazy people. Ronna McDaniel, the niece of Mitt Romney, she said, his white supremacist rhetoric has no place here. What an evil woman. Sleazy woman. Anyways, this is another quote from that speech on which he said it can shoot anybody on Fifth Avenue. I will tell you, Christianity is under tremendous siege, whether we want to talk about it or whether we don't want to talk about it. And yet we don't exert the power that we should have, Trump said. And that's because, you know, it's a weak, simp, cucked version of Christianity where you just surrender to what's evil against people who are right. Christianity will have power, Trump said. If I'm there, referring to if he becomes president, this was before he became president, right? You're going to have plenty of power. You don't need anybody else. You're going to have somebody representing you very, very well. That's a weird-looking place, but he was speaking in front of these 3-story pipe organs. And he said, remember that. This woman is such fake news. That's a tweet from Elizabeth J. Diaz that we're showing on the screen. It was a small Christian college where he was speaking, right? Evangelicals for years, this is what this woman is writing. Evangelicals for years have defined themselves as values voters, people who prize the Bible and sexual morality and loving your neighbor as yourself above all. And by saying that, she's implying that Trump doesn't love his neighbor, which is a total lie. Of course he does. Donald Trump was the opposite. He bragged about assaulting women. Fake news. He didn't brag about assaulting women. That's such a dumb statement. So that's fake news number one on the part of this Elizabeth Diaz. Even when he talked about grab him by that whatever, he was, that was behind closed doors, and he was saying they let you do it. They throw themselves on you. You can do anything. I can just go up and start kissing them. When you're a star, they let you do it. That's not assault. He got divorced twice, which is true, but that's not, it's in the past, right? It's in the past. He's not getting divorced again, at least not that we know of. He built a career off gambling. That's not true. The places that he owns Trump Tower in Vegas, which is relatively new. It has no gambling in it. Did you know that? And he also owned the place, was it Taj Mahal in Atlantic City? Did it even have casino gambling in it? I don't know. Or was that managed by somebody else? His career wasn't off gambling. So that's another lie. He cozied up to bigots. Who? Who did he cozy up to? Who did he cozy up to? Does anybody know what that's a reference to even? Blacks. Oh yeah, he was friendly with Al Sharpton a little bit. Or I don't even know. I don't think he was friendly with Al Sharpton. But he was, he got some award from the NAACP. Those are bigots. Bigot means you can't stand other people's true opinions. But when they say bigots, they mean somebody who's telling the truth about other races than whites, right? Which is never told. He rarely went to church. Ooh. My dad rarely went to church, and he was a better Christian than anybody else in my family. My dad rarely went to church, and he was a better Christian than anybody else in our family who went to church regularly. Seemingly, anyways. So that doesn't mean anything. He refused to ask for forgiveness, which is another sleazy type of a lie, because he was talking about, I try to do right the next time. He doesn't try to do the cop-out thing where, oh, I can't help it. No, he tries to do it right the next time when he makes a mistake or an error. A moral error. So she calls it a contradiction that has held for years. They stood by him when he shut out Muslim refugees, which is so silly. He shut out people from, he wanted to stop the refugees from coming in. That is a good thing because the refugee system has been very corrupt. Just look up A-N-N, I think. I don't think it has an E at the end. Corcoran. C-O-R-C-O-R-A-N. Ann Corcoran. She used to run this website called Refugee Resettlement Watch. The website was shut down by WordPress without any notice, I think. But she's a Christian lady. I think that she's Christian. She acts like one. But who has documented how the Refugee Resettlement Program has been putting refugees into these communities against their will to just plant different, families, POC families, right? Not Christians, generally. Some of them are Christians, but they're liberals. They fall for the racism thing. To just scatter a whole bunch of people of color to bring up Democrats in these other areas. And crime and all kinds of mess. And that's considered anti-Christian? And Muslim refugees? And we had terror attacks. He was protecting the country. But, she's not an honest woman, this lady. She works for New York Times. When he separated children from their parents at the border, they stood by him. Please. You have to separate the children. You don't even know if those are the real parents. Anyways, stupid lies. And who cares? They're illegal aliens. Anyways, when he issued brash insults over social media, please, he's fighting with people. Ted Cruz was attacking him and smearing him. When he uttered falsehoods as if they were true, elaborate. Which falsehoods? He hasn't said anything untrue, really. He said stuff you could say, oh, that's not exactly accurate. But he said stuff like, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists. They called that a lie. They said, all are not doing that. He didn't say all, but they're liars. When he was impeached, yeah, like we should pull support because a guy was impeached by Democrats. Please, this lady is phony. So here is when the people speak. She actually interviewed some people in this Hake town in, where again? Iowa. And I don't mean Hake town in the terms of whatever. So one guy talked about the good old days. You don't lock the doors. I never take the keys out of the car. That's what he remembers. Somebody says, cool it with the racial slurs, James. Hake is not a bad word, is it? Anyways, I guess it is used against whites and Southerners and stuff. But this guy, some of these people are not the type of Christians that most support Trump, who really love Trump. Listen to how they describe it. His wife had been quiet, letting him do all the talking. This is this lady referring to this family. There's this man, and he has a wife and some kids in his 30s. His wife had been quiet, letting him do all the talking. She did not go to Mr. Trump's speech, and politics were not her thing. Isn't that so refreshing? Often, the men around here were more vocal than their wives about supporting the president. Now she spoke up. Isn't that so nice, though? That's how it really should be. Because even when you hear conservative women getting all animated about politics, it's usually there's something awry. There's something awry. She's taking it too far or whatever. Here is this from this woman. The religious part is huge for us as we see religious freedoms being taken away. And that's true. Just pure freedoms, period, being taken away. The right to discriminate is taken away. The First Amendment has been under attack with this fake hate speech and fake hate crimes laws. If you don't believe in homosexuality or something, you lose your business because of it. And that's a core part of your faith, whereas I see Trump is defending that. And Trump is okay with the gays, but he's also okay with the people who have the right to discriminate. Nice boomer. He's actually made an executive order to put Bibles back into the public schools, according to this lady. I hadn't heard that. That is something very worrisome and dear to us, our religious freedom, she says, referring to the liberal attack on Christians, including from the New York Times. She said, it's almost like a reverse intolerance. If you have somebody that's maybe on the liberal side, they say we are intolerant of them. But it is inverse intolerant that we can't live out our faith, she said. That's how normal Christians see it, and that's the truth. Anybody who's actually not even a Christian can see that's what's going on. Here's some changes in the community. Another guy says when he was a child, the public schools were almost entirely white. Reminds me of what I told you about Steve King, Representative Steve King said. And now half of the kindergartners are Hispanic. He noticed that many of the Latinos in town were Catholic, and they worked or shopped on Sunday, which was traditionally a time of rest in Sioux Center. You know, some of these old Christian businesses, Chick-fil-A and others, close on Sundays. There's a place over in Arcadia, kind of where I grew up, Tacolita. And it was always closed on Sundays because the owners were Christian. I guess they took that as their Sabbath. But listen to this man. He's a young man, 36 years old, a father. I guess it's not that young. But he said, is he a man of integrity? Referring to Trump. Absolutely not. What? She interviewed the wrong people. Does he stand up for some of our moral Christian values? Yes, he said. That's Mr. Schouten, Schouten. So this guy's kind of blind, but at least he supports Trump in some sense. The other guys agreed, I'm not going to say he's a Christian, but he just doesn't attack us, his friend said. So she's interviewing dummies, but they're not that dumb that they don't support Trump. But these people are not normal Christians. These aren't the type of Christians that, by and large, support Trump, I don't think. I think there's a lot of people who love and see him as a Christian. His wife talked about, after the election of President Barack Obama, the country seemed to undergo a cultural shift. That's for sure. But it was already changed, but the ugliness came forth. It was dangerous to voice your Christianity, she said, because we were viewed as bigots, as racists. We were labeled as the haters and the ones who are causing all the derision and all the problems in America. Blame it on the white believers. She's not wrong about that. None of them said that they had wanted to vote for Trump, but they did, when he was the last option, one woman said, and the group laughed. So these are just these nice fake Christians, but not so fake that they couldn't vote for Trump. But, you know, I do know some people like this. I know people who, they play humble and modest and think that he's not modest. They think he's a narcissist or prideful or arrogant, when in reality, they're judging him. But they still support him, right? They still vote for him because they're not that dumb. They're not that off the deep end. But they're the ones secretly judging him and judging others. And even though they lived more modest and quiet lives, it's not that realness. And that realness is what he has now. I don't know if he's always had it, because he did do some crazy things in his life. But maybe he always kind of has, but he's just had a wild life. You know, if you had that much power and that strong personality to take and get what you want, would you have been that pure? Would you have lived a pure life? The people who are like shy and quiet and poor, relatively speaking to him. Nobody's really poor in this country, but poor in terms of not able to afford just any old thing that you want. So just, you know, people have a false sense of superiority over people who live these wild lives like Trump used to. But he's real, and that's what people love about him. That's what's inspiring and exciting to people, is that he's telling the truth and standing on it and standing behind it, even when he's standing alone, seemingly standing alone. There's a lot of us who support what he says, but you just don't hear it in the mainstream media, which is overrun with sleazy people like this lady. And I use the term lady very loosely. I'm not calling her a loose lady. I'm just talking about... Anyways, Obama. Speaking of Obama, this is going into more of what she's talking about. I have to hurry through this. I got to get to some callers. One lady says the years of the Obama presidency were confusing to her. She heard talk of giving freedoms to gay people and members of minority groups, but to her it felt like freedoms were being taken away, and that's true. Even from those people, but they're just too dumb to realize it. And she was turning into a minority. I do not love Trump. This is this lady talking. I think Trump is good for America as a country. I think Trump is going to restore our freedoms, where we spent 8 years, if not more, with our freedoms slowly being taken away. It's been 100 years, more like 120 years. I don't know, maybe even 150 years. Caucasian Americans are becoming a minority rapidly. And she explained, if you're a hardworking Caucasian American, I've never heard that term, Caucasian American, but whatever, your rights are being limited because you are seen as against all the races or against women, she said. Or there are people who think that because we are conservative, have conservative values and value the family, and I value submitting to my husband, I must be against women's rights. Which is a joke, right? Her voice grew strong. I would say it takes stronger women to submit to a man than to want to rule over him. And I would argue that point to death, she said. All right, lady. She said that she felt freer now. Mike Pence is a wonderful gentleman, she said. Poor lady. This is probably a very bad analogy, but I'd say he is like a very supportive, submissive wife to Trump. He does the hard work and the husband gets the glory. I don't know what this lady is talking about. She turned to her husband. Let's be real. Do you have any clue what goes on in our children's lives on a daily basis? No. Wow. She said that to her husband. That is a bad sign of what's going on amongst the Christians. Pence, you can picture as your father, as your dad, he said. Anyways, Hispanics. There's Hispanics in this community, right? They're being more and more overrun. All he remembered was thinking that Mr. Trump sounded like Hugo Chavez, this Hispanic guy says. And he's a Christian, the former Venezuelan strongman. And Hugo Chavez was like a crazy guy. 20 years ago, less than 3% of Sioux County was Hispanic. This is in Iowa, this county. Now the figure has nearly quadrupled, largely as the pork and dairy industries have relied on Hispanic workers. Such a shame. Ill-gotten gain. Most Hispanic migrants who come to the area are very Catholic. They convert to evangelicalism. Mr. Alvarado is this guy who's talking this way. He said he has this church, or he's part of this church or whatever, and he talks about how these people keep a low profile, especially the ones without the right papers, writes this woman. Can you imagine writing like that? They mean illegally here. Illegally here. At first, he even had trouble finding these people. Most of them seem to stick to work, home, and the grocery store. They keep a low profile, the illegals. There's fear in the people, the fear of losing everything. And he's complaining. This guy is 64 years old. He appreciates that Trump defends Christians, but he says we should welcome foreigners, immigrants. See? Even the so-called Hispanic Christians have a diluted sense of reality. He says, doing things like dividing the family, I don't think that is very Christian. What a sucker. And building walls instead of helping people with medicine, food, especially old people getting sick for not having enough income. This guy is so deluded. And he says that he does not talk about Trump with the white Christians around him. See that division? He says, they realize that he is kind of persecuting Hispanics, he says. So they won't talk about much about that in front of me. And the same thing, he won't tell them his opinion. See that evil division between the so-called Christians, the Hispanic Christians who are suckers for the liberal lie of racism, and the white Christians who are kiss-ups, these nice kiss-ups. He grew quiet when he thought of why he believed the white evangelical community around him supported Trump. Then he spoke as if it were obvious. They're not Hispanic. They have not been living what we have been going through. What is he talking about? They have to make their own decisions. I understand that point of view. For them, the benefit is that he is pro-Christian, which is one of the things I like about him. But he should be pro-America. And he should see that these people coming in illegally and supporting all kinds of, they support liberals for the most part, the Hispanics do. And they don't have any love for the whites or America. They don't have any loyalty to America. They still have the loyalty to family and la raza and stuff like that. And then there's this dumb BLM stuff, Black Lives Matter stuff. The black population is less than 1% in this Sioux Center area. Sioux Center is the name of this town, right? And they talk about how, they have the typical thing about Black Lives Matter feels alienating. And it does. It is alienating. It's purposely alienating. They like to divide and conquer, these socialistic people, anti-American socialistic people. And so they talk about how Christianity and conservative politics are fused together. That's because conservative politics supports Christian values, supports what's right, really. And the Democrats are anti what's right. They talk about how there's signs of fraying at the edges of this coalition of Christian evangelicals who support Trump, especially with women and with the younger people. If even a small fraction turns away from Mr. Trump, it could make the difference in this re-election. That's what this woman hopes. That's what she writes. Ms. Elizabeth Diaz. And then they talk about the photo op. They talk. I got to end this real fast, but they talk about the what they call the photo op. That's when Trump ended, just in one fell swoop, he ended the riot in this Lafayette Square outside of the White House, and then he crossed the street and held up a Bible, posed with the Bible in his hand, holding it up in front of St. whatever John's Church, which is a corrupt, filthy church anymore. It's filled with what are those people called? It's a liberal version of Christianity where they are not Christian at all anymore. They support Black Lives Matter. Sleazy. It's not Presbyterian, it's Episcopalian. Yeah, United Methodist, but Episcopalian is what that church is. So it's just a rotted church spiritually. But he's standing in front of it with the Bible as a symbol of standing for Christianity, because BLM is anti-Christian. The Antifa are anti-Christian and anti-American. And he's standing for what's right. And they called it just a photo op. And they said armed officers tear-gassed peaceful protesters. First of all, it wasn't tear gas, it was smoke bombs. And they were not peaceful. There were some people who were playing peaceful, but if you're supporting Black Lives Matter, you're not peaceful. You're smearing decent people and supporting criminals and people who hate cops. And everybody knows that blacks hate cops for no good reason at all. You heard Earl. So right on to President Trump. He said, we have the greatest country in the world. We're going to keep it nice and safe. Isn't that so nice? They called it an instantly infamous moment. I say they, I mean she, this Elizabeth Diaz woman, for anti-Christian pro-BLM idiots, yes, covered by cable news and decried by Democrats as an unseemly photo op. But in Sioux Center, many evangelicals saw it as recognizing the Bible, we are one nation under God. And that's right. He's willing to stand out there and take a picture of it for the country to see he was standing up for Christianity, according to this guy, Schutten. And this guy, Schutten, says, is he a Christian? Absolutely not. But yes, he is. So anyways, I had to share that with you. I wanted to react to that article because I had to read through it to see if this woman got any real insight. Apparently, she didn't get one person who loved that, find one person, or at least she didn't put it out there. She should have talked to Jesse Lee Peterson, right? Who loves what Trump is about, saying that he's more of a Christian than anybody he's seen in his lifetime, right?